Hey, how you doing?
I didn't realize that we were going to talk about possible locate. Okay. Well, if we're gonna, I think if we're gonna talk about it generally like that, then I don't know that we need to recuse anybody because we're not talking about locations anyway. We're just talking about. Just make disclosure. Yeah, it's just. Oh,
We're not voting on anything.
okay. Okay. So I'll pause for that moment and allow you guys to make comment in whatever way. There's no.
Goodness, Mike.
Mics are hot.
Ask questions. So you can ask questions at the beginning of, to get clarification about, do you feel like you know? 'Cause I'm not clear with Shelley either.
About recusing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, but I didn't
Can't discuss or partake in that discussion.
Okay, so how would you advise me to make that announcement?
It's their responsibility to, announcement if they feel like, at that point.
All right.
But if you can try to keep it more general
Yeah.
and not say specific,
Yes.
that would be great.
Yes. Okay. So I think we can begin, right? Everybody's here. It's a little past 7.
Let's get the show on the road.
Okay, we're going to start. 7 o'clock. Call to order. And the first order of is approval of action minutes. So if everybody can take a look at everybody who was here last time, take a look at the last minutes. The motion?
I would move that we approve the action minutes from last meeting.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is that Pearson? Yeah.
So, item
And I
3.
think one abstained.
One abstain.
One
yeah.
abstained, okay, thanks. Sorry about that. Okay, so item 3, public comment, and this is, if anybody anybody from the public has a comment about an item that's not on the agenda. Nope, okay, so we'll go on, item 4, announcement and updates, Shelley.
I have a unfortunate, sad announcement that Commissioner Espin has decided to stop being one of the commissioners for the Parks and Rec Commission. He started when he was on sabbatical and then proceeded to have a baby and got a new job and wasn't sure that he could make it every Thursday meeting, so he made that decision. So the position is posted. It's opening currently on the city's website, and I think it's open until the 14th or 15th. The next announcement is basically a save the date and an invitation to the commission, a save and date invitation to the community as well. The bus stop parklet will be having an opening ceremony on February 25th, which is a Sunday from 12 to 2. That bus stop parklet is located at 1207 Solano. Hopefully you've seen it. And it'll be fun. Everyone's welcome to come to that. And also Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park will be having its opening ceremony on March 1st, which is a Thursday night at 5:30, and the community is welcome to attend that as well.
And I'd like to just announce an event. Saturday night is the ever-popular Chocolate and Champagne Festival, or Gala, sorry, for Albany Community Foundation, Education Foundation, North Bray Community Church on the Alameda, 7 to 10.
Great.
Tickets are available.
Thanks. Okay, so the next item, public hearing presentations, we don't have any until later, right, Shelley? So
That's correct. Our presentation is going to be later this evening. Barth, who's making the presentation, is putting his son to bed.
okay, so 6.1, discuss potential Measure R funded projects for the capital improvement program.
this. Okay. This is an exciting item. It came to the commission after a council meeting that took place in January 22nd. And just as a general thing, my role for the commission is really to provide the commission with updated information so that you have, and you know the possibilities or opportunities that are out there. So you can make informed decisions and make recommendations to council. The funds that were going to be used for the Shrine Pocket Park and Key Route walking path, two projects that were planned. This really is giving the commission a chance at this moment to take a step back and see a big picture and kind of reevaluate the best use of the funds to get the most benefit for the community. So tonight's discussion is about that. There's a pot of money, and there are projects that could qualify for Measure R. And we've done this process before when we were preparing for the CIP that was approved in 2016. And we presented a number of potential projects that went to council for approval. And we took probably a couple of meetings to go through those ideas generated from our work at Friends of Valley Parks, ideas from the commissioners, ideas from staff, and we took community input as well. In the staff report, it talks about that process that we went through and the projects that are currently in the current CIP, not the new one coming up, Memorial Park improvements. There's Ocean View Park, which is a bocce court proposal. Dartmouth Tot Lot, which is almost complete, which was replacing fencing and drinking fountains and things. Ohlone Greenway, which is almost complete. We're just missing the art pieces at this point. And then we had the Key Route walking path down the median and the Shrine Pocket Park. The staff report also details the funding amounts and where the funds were coming for each of those projects. The three main funds that we have been utilizing are Measure WW, Measure R, and Recreation Reserves. So the council was presented it was basically a study session for council on January 22nd, and they had a chance to give feedback to staff on the projects that were presented. There was the next time that the CIP will go to council will be March 5th. And our role in that, the Parks and Rec Commission makes recommendations to council for proposed projects and funding sources. And as I said, there's current funding sources that we are using now for projects Measure R, Measure WW, and sometimes Rec Reserves. I just wanted to quickly kind of go through Measure R. This information's out there. Measure R, here's some details on the screen. Approved in 1996, and it provided funding, a bond measure that provides funding for open space, and that's 50% of money, recreation playfields, which is 25%, and then creek restoration, which is 25%. The amount of money that we're discussing and the reasons behind it are I will get to in one second, is about $294,000 in Measure R. The trick about Measure R is we need to make sure that we're shooting to get that money spent by September of 2019, or at least significantly in the heart of a project that will be finished as soon as we can, near the September 2019 deadline. What took place at the study session, just to go back to the dollar amount, was there was a request by council not to proceed with two projects that we had planned, was Key Route and Shrine Pocket Park. They're not interested in taking those on at this moment in the CIP, and so that's why these funds are available. Quickly, I just want to talk about Measure WW because it's kind of intertwined in this, and for just general background. Measure WW is for park projects, and we have a few projects that are utilizing these funds. There's some tricky deadlines for Measure WW in that they have one more application period, which is the deadline of March 31st. And these projects are supposed to be done by December 31st, 2018, which is coming soon. The East Bay Regional Park District is going to ask their board if they would consider an extension on the completion date, and that won't happen, that request won't happen until May. So if we dig in here a little bit, not that far. Measure R funds can be used for the definition in there. They're playfield improvements. So playfield can mean, I'll go back to this slide for you guys. Can mean actual traditional playfields, baseball, softball, soccer, and other recreational playfields. It's more of the feeling of play in those. The work can include a number of things that are included in some of those projects, like clearing and grading, planting, constructing backstops, goals, restroom facilities, parking improvements, curb gutters, paving, planting, irrigation, lighting, fencing improvements, and maintenance. And Measure R has a separate maintenance fund that we utilize to do some of these projects. And so that's a little bit of a background on Measure R. What's included in your packet are just some ideas that either are possibilities for using Measure R or items that have come up from groups as suggestions and could be applied, Measure R funding could be applied to those. The first one I kept on here is the key route walking path. If this is a project that the commission feels they're really passionate about, it is in the Parks and Rec Master Plan, and it is one of the city's linear parks. You could make a pitch to continue to pursue that as one of the projects. Another one is Memorial Park improvements. We have in the Memorial Park improvements is renovating the bathrooms at Memorial Park, which could qualify if we needed funding for Measure R, because that is included in the definition. There is a possibility with the Measure WW, that is a mainly Measure WW project, that the bathroom amount may come in higher than we anticipated, and I will show you a spreadsheet in a second about that, and we spent a little bit more on our tot lot. That's how things are these days with construction projects. So the next one is a bocce court, and this is on here because it is a currently Measure WW funded project, but it is underfunded. The estimate for it is $85,000 to do it, and we have set aside or requested $42,606 of Measure WW funds for it. So Measure R could be a supplement. I want to come back to these two in a minute after we go through the other ones and talk about it a little bit more in detail. Now, if we move into new projects, and I really want to restate that these are just ideas, and the commission community may have others as well that you can consider and bring back to a following meeting if you wish. The next one is additional parking at Ocean View. This has been a common complaint at Ocean View due to the high use of that field, that there's a limited amount of parking in the area. Parking improvements are eligible for Measure WW funds. The idea here, and I'll show you a picture, is where the red circle is on there. There's some of you may know it as where you go to get sand to fill up sandbags, or right now we're having a lot of illegal dumping of mulch in this section. It's just a bulbed area with nothing there, and there are some trees. This idea is to take out that curb if we wanted to pursue this. Obviously, there would be more details about it. Again, an idea. But we think that you can get maybe about 6 more parking spots in this parking lot, which would be about a 20% increase, and I think helpful for the users, especially at the high time of that park. The next item has come to the commission from the mountain biking group. I think we've had a presentation and maybe one other time that was on our agenda. It is also on the work plan, is looking for a spot to put in a skills area for mountain biking. We have a club at the high school, and they have come to you before and said this would be a great idea and you were interested. The other one are a couple smaller ones, and they don't necessarily meet the threshold of a CIP project because they're less than $25,000, but nonetheless, they still could use Measure R funds to fund them. And that is cementing the batting cage, which at Ocean View. It is a dirt batting cage right now that when it rains or after an entire year of use, it gets lots of big divots and holes in the batting area. And both of the batting cages at Memorial are actually on cement. And so it allows for year-round practice and it limits the amount of maintenance it takes to keep the area nice and flat for using it. Adding a scoreboard, this has been a discussion with Little League for a few years. If they had a scoreboard, they would donate it, or working together with them and having the city install it if they had a scoreboard, or just the city buying a scoreboard for Ocean View. It does not have one. Memorial has one. not necessarily used by every group, but this would be available for adult sports or softball or baseball teams that use the field. The last suggestion also came to you, which was increasing, this is the ball field fencing at Memorial, also eligible for Measure R funds. We had discussed with the school district taking care of those, basically the right and left field line fences to increase those. One to protect tennis players on the left field line, and one to protect cars and houses on the right field line, and probably dogs and people walking along Carmel. The one area that we didn't really get to, but we're asking for the estimates on this so we can have this information later, is the center field fencing. They've met with the neighbors that are experiencing balls that get hit over that area. As you can see, it's the big area basically with no trees that are there to help block. But these people are having baseballs hit off of their house, through their windows, and on their cars. And so I think it should be something you could consider to use the funds for, in addition to what the project included with the school district. Now I wanted to go back to two of the projects just so you have all the information. I want you to, in this, we have a lot of deadlines with these funds, and we have projects, and as you know, projects take time. I want to bring back this one because with Measure R, there is a possibility that we could do a consolidation of one of our Measure WW projects so that we could put those funds into just one project and try to focus on that and get it done and meet the deadline of December 2018. And so these would be the benefits. I'll show you the spreadsheet, but this would be, it would allow, the idea behind it, and I'll come back to this slide actually. The idea behind it would be to close out the Ocean View Bocce project in terms of the Measure WW funding that is set aside for it, and move that funding to Memorial Park, Measure WW. That would allow our shortfall in Measure WW funds at Memorial to fully fund those remaining projects. And we can finish that by December 2018. Then that would put Ocean View Bocce back in the hopper as a project to be considered for Measure R funds, is the basic idea. I'm throwing this out to you just because this would make it efficient. This would really consolidate the amount of money we have out there in terms of Measure WW. It would allow us to get, if you were to decide to consolidate or shift these funds, to get it to the CIP to be considered as just a funding addition to the Memorial Park project. It doesn't change the project at all. It will allow staff to make that adjustment with Measure WW, and it would keep the Memorial Park projects on schedule to be completed. The plans are almost finished for the restrooms, and then the last remaining items are lighting, path lighting, and some additional seating in the park. And it would fully fund those remaining projects because we had an estimate for those bathrooms, but they're probably gonna come in more than we expected. That's been the trend. And it would allow us, because there's no guarantee that they're gonna extend that program, and we don't wanna have to give them that money back. So that would put us in a good zone to try to complete our Measure WW projects by the deadline of 2018. Because we wouldn't find out till May, and we would miss an application process. So I'm putting it out there so that you have that in your brain as we kind of go through those discussions. Let me see if I got through all my little slides. I'm going to leave this on here as a proposal. These are just suggestions for recommendations. Really, the idea tonight is to have a talk and ask questions and get more information about them. If you choose to make the consolidation, the switch with the bocce, that would be a great thing to do tonight. You could have it wait. We would miss a couple timelines, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. And so that is the end of this part of the presentation.
So this is time for a question. I just have a question about clarifying the Memorial Park Improvement Project. So if we didn't do that switch, there would be a short. Was it Memorial Park improvements always going to be funded by WW?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes. With a small amount from recreation reserves. So and I know my charts never are how everybody reads things, but the first one is the original budget was $155,000. That was $135,000 of Measure WW, 20 of rec. And then those are basically our kind of basic ideas what we thought things would cost. The actual on the tot lot reno was a little higher. And then I think that bathroom's going to come in higher, including the design cost for it. The other two remain the same. So it's really that difference in increasing what we think the cost might come in for the bathrooms and going over a little bit in the tot lot.
And that would zero us out. That would be like a
Yeah.
pretty good
That would be great. So
validation of, okay.
yeah, if we moved it over, so that shortfall says we'd be short 41,606. If we moved the money that was going to go to Ocean View, we'd be moving 42,606. So it's pretty much
And would that be the end of the Measure WW funds? I mean, that would be, okay.
Yes. We have a couple last thing, Ohlone is almost complete, but we still need to we have committed $22,500 for the art projects. And then at Dartmouth, we need to complete the sign part of that. So that is the remaining bit of, and then we will have completed all of the Measure WW projects.
Julia, I live within 500 feet of the Memorial Park project,
Okay.
so I will need to recuse myself from that discussion. So I think I will go sit in the audience while you.
Oh,
have
about this
part.
WW, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I have a couple of questions. I'm speaking for Commissioner Patterson tonight. So I have 3 questions. Is the batting cage open to all or restricted to school use?
It's open to all. Yes, there's no closure on it. It's just a net, so you can get in there and use it with just throwing balls, or if teams have batting, pitching machines or things that they utilize in that area.
Okay. So then the bocce court, if approved, could be completed by 2019 timeline for by December 2019 timeline for Measure R.
Measure R's timeline is September 2019, and I think so. That project is a design build type thing where the people who install it have the design for it and they kind of plop it in. And if that's the location that's solid and you want to use the funds for that, yes.
And then third question, what other funding options are there for the Key Route walking path? Because that's over $200,000 if I'm reading the budget numbers correctly.
That's correct. Yes, we had set aside $215,000 to put that path down the middle of Key Route Boulevard. We don't have, fortunately, we've had this great run of getting to use Measure WW funds and then finishing out Measure R funds. And we are expending the end of Measure R as we know it. This is the last pot of it. And then this is the end of Measure WW. So I don't have anything on the horizon.
I have a question about the bocce ball. I'm just wondering, because that was before my time when that got on there, so I'm just wondering about that process and if there were a lot of parties interested in that, seeing that happen.
We have interest. Don't look at me like that. Not a big fan of bocce over there.
No.
Harriet's probably writing things down. Commissioner Patterson is writing things down. There was interest in bocce, and we suggested this space that originally in 2004, when we redid the parks, was a grass volleyball court, and this came up during the drought time. It's a grass patch back there that we have to maintain as grass, and nobody uses it for grass volleyball. So the idea was to convert it. There's a picnic section right there, and that's kind of a typical kind of picnic game. But it also is connected to adult sports, so you can run leagues, bocce leagues and other leagues in a bocce court as well. You're probably going to let Commissioner Patterson keep writing and finish what she's writing.
See.
Commissioner Patterson is on an I can't talk restriction, so.
Okay, so Commissioner Patterson is a big proponent of bocce. And she's wondering about league possibility, all ages, seniors and young adults. It's a very easy recreational sport for people to play and an opportunity for being social.
We have a big contingency in the senior center, and it almost made it into the plans for the Ohlone Greenway, because that would have been really close to the senior center. But they have a big group of people that are huge bocce players that go to play at other locations outside of Albany. Yes.
So the bocce court this wasn't a city council decision to take the bocce off. It's just that it's
no.
just a way to reconfigure the funds, and it doesn't. So if we pulled it off, could we then just I'm not saying that I'm advocating for this. Could we just dedicate it to Measure R?
Exactly, yes. The only part of pulling it off is that I would close it out with Measure WW people, East Bay Regional Park. I would say, we're not going to use Measure WW funds for this project,
Okay.
but you can switch the funding source.
Yeah, because I feel like if we've already gone through that process,
Yes,
I wouldn't want to just say it's never going to happen or we have to reconsider again.
that's a
right?
great
Okay,
question,
so-
yes.
okay.
It would be eligible for Measure R, sorry, funds.
Okay.
If you chose to pick it as one of your projects, yes.
So I have a clarification, sorry, on what we're being asked to comment on tonight. So are we being asked to do two things? Like, one, decide if we want to consolidate the Measure WW funds, and number two, identify projects that we want to put under the Measure R? Are those the two separate things you're asking us to look at?
That's correct, yes. You don't have to decide on the bocce tonight, but as we did in the past in terms of looking at projects and kind of investigating them, this is initial, put them out there for discussion, and it can come back again at the next meeting, and also allow commissioners to think about it and see if there's any additional things to consider, and then you can make a decision at a different time, or direct me to come back with more details on certain projects, so you have more information.
And then in terms of the swap, I think you just said this, but I'm going to repeat it. So you're saying that with the bocce court, right now it's under WW, and so if we do the consolidation, then we're closing out the bocce, but then we can quickly add it back to Measure R, so it really isn't changing anything.
No, you're just changing the funding source, and it's a piece of paper, it's a paperwork trail for East Bay Regional Park District by saying, this is not a project that we're going to complete, and we would rather have those, I would change the scope to include those funds going to Memorial Park improvements.
Okay, thanks.
I just have one more quick question. So we've talked about a few items going over budget. So my question is, with these estimates, is contingency included in those generally?
For which one?
Well, for instance, the $85,000 for the bocce courts, or the $90,000 for the Memorial Park improvements. Do you think
Good
those
question.
included contingency, or?
Yes, city always includes a contingency.
Okay, well, that's my question.
For bocce, the estimate, that was with that estimate was
Sure.
the 85,000. We
It was
left
just-
it with a gap because it was down the line, and then the idea would be that we may have to
Sure.
supplement with rec reserves if we had to
Mm-hmm.
complete it. And the bathroom project is moving forward. It's going to happen. If we had to use rec reserves, we could in a pinch, but that's not ideal if we have a funding source. We have those plans. You guys have seen the plans and approved them. They're getting finished up with the architect, and then estimates will be finalized to make sure the dollar amount's going to be okay. I think we're going to be close, but we just need to be prepared for bids to come in higher than we want them to.
So I have a question about what the council's reasoning was for nixing Key Route Median Path and Shrine Pocket Park.
Not a whole lot of details were given for that. That was the request of a council member, and another one said, I think that's a good idea. And there weren't not a lot of direction to it.
So they weren't saying in order to fund this, it was just, we're not going to try to pursue that this year. Was there any opposition to funding it in future years? I mean,
I don't think so. I think it's just the timing of them. I know that the Pocket Park area will go through that study with the, there's a firm that's doing the Lower Solano, right? I always get that mixed up. Lower Solano Complete Streets, and that section will go through a community process. It'll be part of their focus, is in addition to the bulb outs and crossings and lighting, just because it's in that section.
I guess I'm just wondering, as we're evaluating what to potentially look at Measure R, should we just then not look at Key Route because we've already gotten that direction from council?
You know, what I would say is that you could make the case, is a Pocket Park playfield? And so there could be a debate on that. The Key Route walking path is a playfield. It's considered passive recreation. So if you felt strongly about that, we could have the city attorney is usually the person who makes the call, and if it's an appropriate use of funds. So I could go back and give him, can you double check that these are our appropriate use of Measure R? And we could make a new case for it.
Okay.
If you felt strongly.
Can you put the budget slide, the budget consolidation table slide back up?
Anybody Anybody from the commission have other questions? Okay. Okay, so I'll invite the public to make comment now. You could just say your name.
My name is Sandy Bender. I live at 1333 Thousand Oaks, which is directly across from the home plate. And my husband and another neighbor were here when you were talking about the fencing. If you could put up the slide for that, I really would appreciate it. It occurs to me that actually there was some discussion, I wasn't here, but I happened to watch it, about why the fence was the way it was and how it was built. And since we've lived there since 1983 and have been neighbors since then, I think it's really important to know that that section, which is right across from our house, but that section of fence was at least 10 feet higher from the time that we moved in, because it was used originally when we first came as by the Cougars for high school baseball before they moved down to Cougar Field. So I think what happened, because I happen to have been on the Memorial Park Commission that was studying what to do with it in the 20-aughts, I think that actually it was decided to make the field a softball field and a Little League field, and therefore there wouldn't have been the need for the higher fence because the big boys, the Cougars, weren't playing there. So I think that went into the decision, probably also money, I'm assuming, to make the fence lower than it was the last time the Cougars were playing there. So the point is, it really is, of course, annoying for us that within the last 3 years we've had 2 or 3 broken house windows and a broken car window. But the bigger thing is, the balls do fly over because the fence is not 400 feet, which is recommended at center field for baseball, high school baseballers. They really do bounce off, the balls bounce off the road, and they can hit anything. They can hit pedestrians, cars, and they have hit cars of other neighbors. So what I would really like to propose and hope that you would consider is that we get an estimate for for a net meshing, sort of an inexpensive alternative to making it a higher fence at least, and put that into consideration along with the other two, the 2-file line fences. Because I think what that does then is make playing baseball at Memorial Park safe for all neighbors and all people who happen to just be walking by as well. And also, I think that I want to say again that we are happy neighbors of baseball. My son was a high school baseball player as well as a little leaguer. My daughter played softball. So we're big sports fans. It's just that there has to be some protection for neighbors and also passerbys. And I know it's never fun to put up fences, but in this case, I think if we can find a relatively inexpensive alternative, it really will save potential lawsuits or something that might come down the line, or additional, windows of ours that have to be replaced. Anyway, please, as I said, if you could do that, consider that, I think it would be great for the whole neighborhood.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Brian Beal, 11-year Albany resident. I just wanted to agree with the last speaker. Say all of the projects that are on the plate here, making the ballpark, or whatever it is, safer, the baseball shield would be the top priority because it's a public safety issue. The second thing I wanted to put a plug in for is some sort of mountain biking facility. I think maybe a lot of people don't know about it, but the mountain biking sport, it's sort of an unofficial sport through the high school. It's something that helps teach the children self-reliance and teamwork. So I think this is an important thing to do. Just kind of a general procedural comment, something I see missing on the spreadsheet. If I were in your position to make this decision, I'd want to see what percentage complete the projects were. And the way I would take this is go with the everyone wants something. There's some project, they want this project or that project, but I would take the most complete projects and get them done so that we use up this funding, and then just go down the list until you've exhausted all the money. So thank you very much.
My name is Judith Heller, and I'm part of the community garden. I'm on the steering committee there. Simple question. Can Measure R funding be used for relocation of the community garden?
Looking at me?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
I would need to, I will have to get back to you. As I said, I can propose the various projects to see if they would qualify for Measure R funds, and I can get back to you on that.
I mean, at first blush, I mean, it's playfield, so it doesn't seem necessarily, but if it's part of some sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
There's some playing in the dirt, though.
Well, yes.
It's not my call to make, but I can follow
Yeah,
up with
yeah.
that, yeah.
Anybody else have comment, public comment?
Hello, I'm Jim Russell. Thanks for the opportunity to speak a little bit. For those that weren't on the commission at the time, I would just mention that in December 2016, I made a presentation on Albany Mountain Bike Skills Park. I think many of you were there. So I know there's not a cost estimate for it, but I just figured I'd provide a little bit of information on there since it wasn't available. There's a park, a mountain bike skills park being constructed in Richmond along the Richmond Greenway there, and it's probably bigger than what we would do in Albany, and its cost for the terrain and so forth is $60,000. So I imagine ours would be somewhere in the $30,000 to $60,000 range. I don't until you finalize the details, you wouldn't know for sure. So that was one thing I wanted to add a little bit, and I'm happy to work with anybody on figuring out some of the details. Of course, one of the big challenges is still exactly where to put it, because we need to identify the spots. There was some discussion previously and some opportunities mentioned, but nothing definitive yet. So work would need to be done, I guess, reasonably quickly in terms of identifying a location to meet the deadlines that are being discussed. One other idea I'd like to just mention in terms of possible funding is something I mentioned during the Greenway, the Ohlone Greenway Improvement Project scoping phase. It is a heavily used park in Albany, and unfortunately there's no public bathroom in the park. That doesn't stop some people from using it as a public bathroom. So I do a lot of litter cleanup out there, and virtually every time I go out there I'm finding some fecal stained material that is highly undesirable. So if it would be possible to add some sort of a bathroom along the Greenway, I think that would be a valuable asset. Most parks do have a bathroom. Admittedly, it's going to be costly if you were to run a pressurized supply and then drain plumbing. I've seen some kind of nice, fancy porta potty versions of bathrooms that don't require the same extent of capital investment. So something like that might be a good thing to consider. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, so I guess now we bring it back to the commission. Anybody has any comments?
Well, I would strongly support the additional fencing at Memorial Park Ball Field. I think the mountain bike skills area we've talked about a lot. I think it's a great idea and a very promising area under the freeway. I don't know if you've looked at that area, but I think that it has some potential. We even noticed, Shelley and I were down there, there's some parking. There's actually a nice little parking area, and then it goes right to the bike path. Could be pretty cool. And then I had a couple suggestions or just questions maybe. So I know that historically there has been problems with drainage on that main section of Memorial Park, kind of the, I guess, the west lawn. Is there anything that's being done about that? I know we've tried a few times, but it would be nice to just fix that. I understand there's actually, it's like that. It's supposed to be a creek, and it's not a creek, but there might be something we can do about that. And then I like the idea of a bathroom on the Greenway, which could potentially serve as, it's an improvement. And I guess Measure R specifically mentions restrooms, so that might be able to go.
So I'm going to speak for Commissioner Patterson. Commissioner Patterson says, I'd swap the consolidation under Measure WW if we could put the bocce under Measure R. I'd support, not swap. I'd support the consolidation under Measure WW if we could put the bocce under Measure R. She also likes the mountain bike skills area and the fencing at the ball fields and bocce again. So I would echo the same. I would echo Commissioner Patterson. I think that the Memorial Park improvements were so far along. I think it's really important to make sure we have the funding, so I would support allocating that money, consolidating Measure WW funds. I think that we've heard from the community members multiple times about the bike skills area. I was really excited about the Caltrans opportunity that we heard about at the last meeting, so I would like to see that move forward. Also, the ball field fencing, we had community members come speak to us, and I think it's really important for public safety. So I would support that. And then one thing that I have a question about in terms of adding something additional is the edible landscape. Like, we haven't had many people come to us about the edible landscape. That's not really ball fields, but it is adjacent to the ball fields. There was a lot of volunteer work that was done, and I wonder if, I know it's not the community garden, it's different because it's not a separate plot for a person, for a particular family, but I really think that the edible landscape project improved Memorial Park considerably. People put so much time into it, and it would be great if we could provide some funding back to that organization for upkeep or grading lands. I don't know what has to be done there, but that would be something I would like to see.
Any other comments? Can you go back to the table, Shelley, with the funds? Because I just want to get, there's the one question of moving, but there's 240,000 available potentially to R if we moved things. Am I saying that wrong?
294,000.
294,000.
Yes.
That's the Measure R pot.
That's Measure R pot.
Okay.
And if we're finishing this up, I'm just wondering, so this estimated cost of tot lot Reno bathrooms, does that mean that we don't have enough to cover those right now? I'm just wondering what the reason is to put the original budget versus estimated cost, the shortfall.
Yes. We're anticipating, tot lot renovation costs a little bit more than we expected. So we had budgeted, in our minds of like how we would split up 155,000, 45,000. We hit 56,606.
I guess
we have 90.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I should, instead of asking you about each one, I guess I'm just wondering, to Brian's point, does that mean that we need to make up for that amount, for that difference?
We will, if those bathroom costs come in higher and we still want to complete the projects, which is like lighting and seating, we're going to need some additional funds. If it doesn't come from the consolidation, then we would have to consider using probably recreation reserves to make sure that it's completed.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not asking
okay.
the question right. So from tot lot Reno down, we're already finished. We're not talking about any funding for that because we don't need to worry about funding for those projects. They're already funded, done, even though the estimated cost was higher than the projected.
We have, bathrooms are not done, right? The plans are finished.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So it goes back up there.
And the last two remaining things, which were the smaller things, are path lighting in the front of Memorial Park. It's extremely dark for people just walking through the park during the winter.
Got it, totally.
Okay.
Now I understand.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Everybody else probably understood except for
No, it's good.
I apologize. That was the breakdown of
Okay.
that 196.
Yes,
Got it.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it. Okay. So I guess I'm just trying to understand. So we have this 294,000 potentially and it's open right now.
Yes.
So even for the ones that we just talked about, the lighting, the bocce court, even the mountain biking part, that would all fit within that 294,000 budget, is that right?
I mean, it's pretty close, yeah, depending on
Okay.
what you decide to do, yes.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to make clear.
Technically, what you would be recommending to council to consider, because they have the final approval. So you'll be making a recommendation for the projects for them to approve.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how the commissioners feel. I mean, there's one action, which is to
Yeah.
okay the using Measure WW to finish up the memorial, which I highly support.
Yeah.
So
I'll even make a motion that we,
Okay.
we do the recommended swap of Measure R and Measure W projects. Is that clear? Is that a clear enough motion? Okay.
I second. Should we take a vote?
Discussion, or-
Okay. Oh, yeah, discussion? Yeah.
Seems like clear.
So you want to vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so then the second is to discuss Measure R. And, well, we've taken some public comment, discussed it, but we don't need to take action.
You do
tonight.
not need to
Shouldn't
take action.
today because, and I'm just wondering what maybe the commissioners can weigh in on how we might extend this conversation. I mean, it's a significant amount of money for the public, so do we want to do a workshop about this? Is there any other step to take to get more information from the residents about what they'd like to see?
What's the timeline that we would have to get that input back?
That's a good question. It's not as urgent as the Measure WW one. I mean, there still is this September 2019, but for Measure R, we're not trying to get it into the CIP that's going in March 5th. So we're relaxing that. If we come up with projects, then each individual project will be a recommendation to the council with the recommended funding source, and then they would have to approve it individually, and we'd amend the CIP. So not as rushed as the other one.
So do we control the Measure R money? I mean, it's as
Playfield
opposed to the WW, which is,
East Bay.
we have to be
Correct.
applying for, but
Yes.
the R we have. I mean.
That's right.
Basically, okay.
Yes, and we need to spend it.
Sure, yeah.
So the guiding is the ballot measure language and what
Right.
its intent was.
And what happens to the money if it doesn't get spent?
It's going to be spent.
Well, I'm just asking.
Well, you have the same issue with because you guys you do the work for Measure R open space in terms of Albany Hill. It's the same situation. We want to make sure we're moving in a direction that's going to spend that money or show a substantial
Make an
thing
argument. Okay.
happening. The construction's about to start. It's a contract or a bid has been issued, and that we're moving to spend that money. I think that, and I am not the attorney that handles bond measures, but the idea is that you could feasibly have to give that money back if it's not spent.
Okay, so does anybody have any comments about what the next step might be for Measure R, discussion of how to spend those funds? Anybody have any ideas?
You could direct me to come back with details if there's projects you want to try to get some sort of estimate on. I think that's what the approach we took with Measure WW and R and the last time.
Okay.
Is I can try to work with Public Works to see if we can get estimates on the parking, if that's something interested in, getting some details, maybe if scoreboard is interesting, if cementing, the fencing, we'll work on those estimates.
I think the mountain bike part too,
mountain
if there's a
bike-
way, maybe you can work with Shelley to get some more
Jim and I can
definitive.
You want to know how
do some work on that, or if there's a commissioner that wants to join us in that investigation to pull some details together. Yeah. Commissioner Abbott is correct that he and I took a walk to look at that site, and I'll tell you the secret that one of the gates is unlocked, so you can walk over there. Not telling you should go in there, I'm just saying you can, and it is a
People do.
nice space.
People do.
It's good timing to be talking about this because of the Caltrans presentation we had, and we can't move forward with them if we don't know what we would be asking them for. So
Okay.
it's a good time to investigate.
So Commissioner Patterson is in favor of figuring out how much it would cost for both the mountain bike and the fence option, and I agree. I think that should be our next step for those two projects at least.
Yeah.
Mountain bike, and what was the other one?
The fence.
Mountain bike and the fence. Yeah, I'm not I think the reason I like both of those two projects is there's I guess the fence is protection of property. But I just think, I like the idea of the mountain biking skills, because that's a new recreation activity to bring to Albany. And some of these other ones are not new, they're just sort of supporting existing, existing recreation that already happens, so.
And we've already done the work on the bocce courts. We don't need additional work from you on that, but okay.
Okay, so does anybody else have any comments? Okay, so I think we'll move along then to the next agenda item, which is the discuss dogs in Albany parks and possibility of a future dog park in Albany.
Okay. I'm going to start with this. If you are not getting e-notification from the city's website, I have made a new category on there in calendar that is dogs, it says, I don't have my glasses, dogs in Albany. I encourage you to sign up for this because this is a great way. If I post an agenda that has something that has to do with dogs, any kind of dog topic, I will check that box and you will get it in your inbox. It's almost impossible, but I definitely try to reach as many people I know that are interested in topics. But relying on me to get a personal email from me is hard, right? I do my best, but I'm not going to catch every single person who might interact or have a dog in Albany. So I'm just going to keep promoting this to make sure that people can stay informed. And this is a really easy way, and I will always check the box when it's on the agenda.
And you get to that form with the e-notification link on the
Yeah, thank you
top
for asking.
page,
So
yeah.
the city's website and that link that says get the dog updates, when you click on that, it allows you to sign up. It's hard to see on here, but the top is just entering your name and email address. And then you can check any of those boxes to get all those updates. I recommend Parks and Rec Commission and the dogs in Albany, both of those. You'll still get the same information. You won't get it twice, but to ensure that you get the updates when they're posted. Okay. Okay, so again, this item that is on the agenda is on there because there's some new information, and it's an opportunity for the commission to get information and kind of stay on top of what's out there. And the new information was the introduction of a Caltrans possibility. And we couldn't even suggest that we want to use that space if we didn't even know that we may want to put a dog park there or a mountain biking park there if we don't do the investigation, the legwork into that. And that's what spurred this topic being on the agenda. So I want to make sure you know that it wasn't because of, a clash between two groups or any of those things. It was really because this is something that if you're interested in pursuing this, that maybe it's a way to shift focus and if you wanted to focus on a dog park with these new possible locations. And I do want to make sure that I say that tonight, if you take action on the dog park, it would be to take action in a way that would be requesting that you would be amending our work plan to include doing this investigation of a new dog park so that you could prepare a recommendation to council with pros and cons of the different sites, and so that you could have a group to get together to kind of focus on this, or if the commission wanted to focus on it. So that's ultimately the one of the actions that can take place. We're not deciding on a location, but we're introducing this as a possibility. And typically when we talk about dogs in parks, we talk about only Section B and the issues that it has. And so this is an effort to try to think in terms of possibilities, but definitely not a decision that we're making today. So it's really to start the conversation and see if there even is an interest. One of the conclusions from tonight might be that, no, we're fine, things are good, we don't need to pursue this item. And so that is available. I'll put up a list of kind of possible actions for the commission. I want to do just a little bit of background information. Oh, good. About dog stuff, and a lot of people in this room know these things. And one of the great things about Albany is that we have a very dog-friendly leash law, that dogs can be off-leash under voice control, unlike our surrounding neighbors, which is a little more restrictive. They both have leash laws in Berkeley and El Cerrito, which really restricts the dog's ability to just run free in parks, which is a great thing in Albany. Dogs aren't allowed in Albany in Section A, which is the baseball field at Memorial, or inside any of our play structures, and those seem to be things that are working out in Albany. This need for a dog park is really when dogs that need to be inside a fenced area either have recall issues, they may have disabilities, or they have owners who can't necessarily take them on normal walks or play in parks. And so there is a need in some places for a dog park, or if you live in a community that has a very restrictive leash law where you can't just run your dogs in open space. As I said, that in Albany, we are fortunate, actually, that there are a lot of nearby dog parks, and I just put them on a map, and I'm sure there's more that are, informal. These are more of the published ones in our area, and it's pretty amazing that it's within about 2.5 miles of Albany, and that seems like a very good resource to our community and other communities that these are out there if you need the space, which is a valuable space for people who need the fenced area. So as I said, this came up because of the new information about the Caltrans properties. We had that presentation from Aleda. It's in the work plan to investigate the possible use of these sites, and those possibilities could be anything, but this could be one of them if it was an interest in the community. The two sites that we talked about, and mainly we talked about the one where across from the park and ride. The other one is a Caltrans property is over off of Cleveland, and it still is underneath the freeway. So those are the two spaces that kind of spurred this thinking outside of the fenced area at Section B in a different way. I proposed a couple other things, and again, this was just to put other things out there as possibilities, and there may be more that the community may come up with as well. There's a space in Ohlone Greenway, there's space in Ocean View Park, and one item that came up in the past with using Ocean View, for example, was if dogs were allowed at UC Village and if that was even important to them or they would care. And I thought I would add that bit of background because it was a dangling question, and contacted the management at UC Village and was surprised to find out that they have about 100 service animals that are approved to be in UC Village. And they had been looking to try to find a dog park space in their UC Village, but they've had some budget issues, and they said it would be a value to their residents to have a dog park location nearby. But that also could mean a possibility for working with them. Maybe they have some space, and maybe we can help make a space, who knows. All of this to come out, and if the commission were to choose to amend the work plan and pursue discussions, coming up with an analysis and more investigation, just like we do with anything else. I have Section B on here, and some of that is because there is a very long history. Memorial Park has been there for a long time, and it was mainly a ball field, and Section B was formed in 2011 when we put a fence up with the intent of keeping dogs off the field. We had some run-ins between dogs and kids at sports, and this seemed like the best solution to keep dogs off the field. And in doing that, the idea was that the other side, so Section A is the ball field, the other side, Section B, was supposed to be used concurrently with when there's a game on the field, people could be on Section B and play, or dogs could be there. It was supposed to be a multi-use space. Over the years, a dog park idea in that area has been turned down by various councils, there's different people on councils or commissions. The commissions and councils have really hung on to that it's supposed to be a multi-use space by not allowing any sort of amenities to be approved, and that's gone through us and this commission and through council a couple times. And there's a side of the neighbors, and this is I'm telling you like the story, of how we've gotten here, and there's a side of the neighbors that when that fence went up, they were told this was going to be a multi-use space. And as we tried to keep solving this problem, how we keep people there at only certain times and don't let them be there all day long, and how can we close it down to give people a break because their neighbors are very close. We really created a dog area without calling it that, and that wasn't the intent at the beginning, nor did the neighbors have a chance to give input into a dog park and how they felt about it. And so I'm not sure if that's necessarily fair either. So both sides don't have really a fair crack at either one, having a dog park officially and have the amenities that they might need, or having had input at the beginning in if that space should be used that way. I think that we have to be real about that and really just, this is that moment where he's taking a step back and kind of thinking about the spaces in Albany and how we're using them. It has definitely cut back on the amount of time that people can use that part of the park. If it's got a lock gate between 11 and 8, then we lose out on morning time for free play. It's closed for 3 months out of the year. We lose out on people using that space to play. So those are just brought up as in terms of like getting out some of the basic information. I've gone back through many years, believe it or not, into the 90s of issues with this configuration, so to speak. So again, the idea of putting this on there was, is it a way to kind of shift focus away from that area? Not to say it's closing, that's completely a topic that you guys talk about, but is there a way to think more positively about, is the need there in Albany for a fenced area for dogs with amenities, or is there not, or is there a space, or isn't there a space, or is Section B a good use of space with dogs in there, or maybe it could be used in a different way. So these are the tough decisions that come to commissions, and tonight is a great, I can tell you that I have reached out to different groups and had a chance to speak with people and kind of get input and have hear their stories and make sure they felt heard, and tonight is just another way to do that. What I want to do is just put up here, because we're not cornered into doing anything tonight. I just want to put up some possible actions for the commission, but the commission can give direction to staff on what the direction they want to go. So one is to take no action on the item, obviously. The other one is if, yes, it sounds like maybe exploring a possible dog park, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but doing the legwork for the council. The first step in that is to request an amendment to our work plan to include that as a task. As you know, they want us to stick to what we've presented to them, and our 2-year work plan goes through 2019. And so the text up there is an example of what we might be asking for. So identify options for establishment of a dog park in Albany, examine the alternatives, and make recommendations regarding location options, and a pro-con analysis for each location option. That is doing the legwork and really getting community input and working with people to present something that is well thought through to the council so that they can make decisions. The other one, you could open discussions about Section B specifically or not, or you could just say, give me something to do about the item. So just so you have how that works, Park Rec Commission makes a recommendation to council to amend their work plan. The council would have to approve that, okay? So before even moving forward, if council decides, no, that's not something we want you to pursue, then it would end right there. So that is a possibility. So discussion about Section B could continue, but because this item isn't on our work plan, we need to make sure we have approval before doing any sort of work on it. And that's all I have for that.
Any questions?
Oh, I did have one question. So you're talking, or I'm just talking about Section A, Section B. So can you describe the restrictions on Section A?
For dogs?
No, just the restrictions. I mean, it's locked too most of the
Yes.
time, right? So it's also not available for multi-use or other use. It's just.
That's correct.
Okay.
It is.
I was just trying to remember. I didn't.
Field use by permit only is
Permit,
basically
okay.
the resolution on that one. And that is not the same. It is, we try to keep it to permit use at Ocean View, but there is definitely a restriction of no dogs on Memorial Park
Sure,
Section A,
sure.
which is called out,
Yeah.
but not on Ocean View.
Right. Okay.
But those gates may be locked at Ocean View as well,
Right. Yeah, I've seen that.
which doesn't allow for very much free play.
Not much. Unless you like climbing fences.
That's true. If I can add one more thing about just a hanging item was the dog ad hoc committee.
Right.
There is only one person. This was established in 2001. There was an item at the time about Memorial Park putting up temporary fencing to establish a dog park. It went to council, and council said, stop that, but form a dog ad hoc committee to talk about how dogs use parks. And they went through processes about establishing some of the ordinances about where dogs can be and hours, not hours, but leash, off leash was the work that they did. So we'll continue with, I have reached out to him, his name is John, to see if he's still interested, if we needed to involve him into to any sort of community discussions. We may also find that council may say that, no, we don't need the dog ad hoc committee to continue, and we'd rather have Parks and Rec determine how they want to handle if there was a discussion about dog parks or options. So still a little gray. That it was formed. It was at a, I don't remember when they did this in 2001, but they had a joint meeting between the council and the Parks and Rec Commission, and they had a long list of. They just got through a bunch of stuff, and so that's when council gave direction to the Parks and Rec Commission to form the dog ad hoc committee, and that's when. So it's. We'd have to talk to the council to see if that's how they'd still like it to be, but there is only one person left out of the 5.
So
He's still there.
Excuse me, I have another question. So you've said Memorial Park ball field is off limits to dogs, and Ocean View currently is not, but there is some possibility of changing those regulations. Is that part of this whole discussion tonight, since you titled it Dogs in Albany Parks?
Yeah, I entitled it Dogs in Albany Parks because there was more than just the dog park part of it. It's close to the time 2011, 2012, when Section A was established, is when the commission recommended that dogs not be allowed on Section A, and that is the only ball field that is called out in the ordinance. We have had that item come up before at this commission if you wanted to pursue changing Ocean View's rules to match Memorial Field's rules, and the commission decided no, they were fine leaving them the way they were, to allow dogs to still be on that field.
And my recollection is that we did that because we knew we were going to be having this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Or maybe people were fine. We do have some people that use that field and set up dog agility things. And
So I guess just one more question. Are there other parts of Albany parks that we should be thinking about that might be off limits to dogs? Like, I don't know, the bocce court or something like that.
I think cats are what you need to worry about with the bocce court.
it's not sand, but yes, it is. Those are all topics that a few other times have come up, but definitely keeping dogs out of fenced or play structure areas. If you had a group of tennis people here, they might say keep dogs off of tennis courts or fenced areas. But yes, a bocce court or something else may need to be included in that if that is the wish of the commission to pursue.
So perhaps we should call that a completely separate issue and address it another time.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should maybe listen and hear what the public has to say before deciding how we deal with this particular issue. I think I don't have any more questions at this time. I probably will have questions later. So does anybody else have any questions from the commission? Okay, so maybe we can open it up to public comment.
Hi, I'm Brian Beal here, speaking as a cat person. I'm a non-dog owner, but something I've noticed, I work in Berkeley and sometimes walk home past the Cedar Rose, somewhere around there. And I've noticed, and also go to Point Isabel, and I've noticed there's a lot of social benefits for both humans and dogs. So I think this would be a good thing to have in Albany. So I think it would be a good idea for the commissioners to have this on their work plan. In terms of the location, I know we're not really talking about that today, but it seems to me it would be really good to have something that's closer to the center of Albany. And a spot where I see a lot of dogs is in between the Ohlone Greenway and Masonic Avenue at the southern end of the town, bordering Cordonices Creek. I've seen dogs there, and it seems like, I don't know what the arrangement is with who owns that, but it seems like that would be a good location. And I think, the only counter indicator is, the existence of vicious breeds and how you handle, that sort of thing. So I think this is a great issue for the commission to study. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? No more comment? Okay. Okay.
Hi, my name's Jill Lodwig, and I live at 1341 Thousand Oaks, so right across the street from Section B, and I've lived there since 1997. First, just wanted to thank you for, especially Shelley, for taking kind of a long-range view of not just what to do with Section B, but also what to do with, our parks in general. And I think she's done such a great job of being an advocate of all the interested groups here. And I think she's also played a role in kind of diffusing, some of the tension that has gone on for close to a decade now around Section B in the dog park. And she's been really helpful. So I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that we have a 13-year-old dog that we've had since pre-Section B days, and we've used the park, the baseball field across the street. We were some of the hardcore regulars that were very good at keeping our dogs off the baseball field. When there was a game, there was a time when there was incredible harmony between the dog people that used the baseball field during baseball games and the baseball people. And then something hit the fan around, I don't know when that was, 2010 or so, and things really changed. And we don't really use Section B at all anymore. It's not appealing to us. It's not appealing to our dog. It's the fencing does something strange inside there. I'm kind of the feeling that more fencing, especially on that side of the park, on the north side of the park, there's so much fencing, and there's just sort of an intensity that happens inside Section B because of it. And it doesn't feel good to me at all. I will say, with the exception, there's a noon group during the weekday that makes Section B a really pleasant place. I don't go over there, but I hear them because I'm right across the street. And I hope when you make your decision, keep in mind that that noon group is, if we could spread them throughout the day in Section B, I wouldn't be standing here. So, but unfortunately, our dogs don't live forever, and the population of Section B changes over time, and we've seen so many different types of groups move in and out of there, and unfortunately, it's not steady. And the attention that the noon group gives to quiet, keeping the area quiet for the neighbors, you don't see that at all times of the day. And I am certain that we won't always see it at noontime because these people won't be here forever. So just wanted to say that. I myself, we were putting the second song. I'm almost done. I myself really appreciate the liberal leash laws in Albany. My dog and I, we go everywhere, and my husband does too. On Sundays, that's Sparky's day for a special day, and we are everywhere. We're at Terrace Park, we're on the front side of Memorial Park, we're at the Berkeley Marina, we're up in Tilden, we pick a place. We're at the amphitheater, I forget the name of it, in Kensington. We go up there, Indian Rock. There's a million places to go with your dog. Our dog doesn't need a fenced-in area. We have him under voice control. I find that over on the south side of Memorial Park, when I'm there with my dog, I never see conflict over. People take their dogs over to that side, to the playground side. I don't see dogs in the playground. I see families playing, in the grass area there. My dog's off leash, never a problem, and never a problem with other dogs. Again, I think the fenced areas sometimes create more tension. So I appreciate the liberal leash laws. I just wanted to say, it's pretty obvious. I very much support moving, hopefully, a community garden into Section B and bocce ball courts. I, number one, support removing the fencing. I think that there's too much fencing on the north side. I think aesthetically we need to care about what our parks look like, and I think the fencing in Section B should come down. I love the idea of a community garden, of an expanded community garden in that space. I think it's a really good use of space. And I think the bocce ball courts would be, I think it's a great idea. It's nothing I ever thought of, but I think it would be fantastic. Living across the street from a park, we expect noise. We've lived with noise for, 20 years now, and We don't mind that noise. We don't mind the baseball park noise, playground noise. Dog park noise is a different thing. It's a very different experience. And I just wanted to say that I think the thing that would be really great about relocating creating a real dog park somewhere, it would give us another place to go on Sundays. And I think it would be, the destinations are fun. And I think it would be nice to give the people who do use the dog park regularly the amenities that they want and the space that they desire in a place that is not as residential. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other?
Jim Russell again. So I've spent a lot of time on that section of the Greenway between the creek and Dartmouth, and it is used a lot by dogs. So I'm not a dog person myself, but just sharing my observations. It's a place where lots of people have these, things where they throw the tennis balls really far, and it's one of the few locations in Albany where the dogs can really run freely for a long stretch, and it's a nice long linear stretch. So if we were to add fencing, I guess I would be concerned that the dogs might lose this long stretch of free open grass so it'd either take a lot of fencing to make a nice long enclosed dog park area, or then you might end up with a piecemeal thing that dog owners might not be as happy with as the current arrangement. So those are just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Elsie Zephyr. Where's that woman? Thank you. I am part of the Noon Group. I'm very pro Memorial staying the way it is. And the beauty of Memorial Park, and I could go on for more than 3 minutes about it, but it's a neighborhood park. And the people who go there, and I have to speak in part to the Noon Group. I go there literally 5 days a week, sometimes more. And I see the same people, and I see the same dogs, and we have literally created a community, because you start off just with your dogs in common. And then as is the norm with human beings, you start talking about other things. And now there's a bunch of us. We go out every month, and we go to dinners, and we go to movies. And it's to me what parks are about. It's not just dogs versus human. It's community coming together. So I want to thank Shelley. It is very true. She is in the middle of this, and she has tried to accommodate everybody, and I do appreciate that. So I'm going to just throw it out there what I really think. At first I was thinking, well, it's either Memorial or it's one of these other places. And I thought, why does it have to be like that? Why can't Memorial continue to be an off-leash area, and we still have a dedicated dog park in Albany? And a lot of the people who go to Memorial, who come from outside of there, would probably go to the dedicated dog park, leaving Memorial kind of for the nice people who come at noon. And no disrespect to the people who come later or earlier. So that's my thought, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sandy Bender. Again, since 1983, I've been a neighbor to the park, and I actually had a dog for 13 years. And we actually were able to use the park before it became Section 8. So I fully understand the community of having dog owners and dogs be there. But at that point, we were using all of Memorial Park for that. But my kids also were able to use all of that side of Memorial Park for informal kinds of games, or tossing the ball, or kicking the soccer ball. And I think that what is really unfortunate about what has happened since there was the division between A and B is that whole feeling of open free space to use with some enclosure. So it's different than the other side of Memorial Park that's open, has been eliminated because Section A now is really only for baseball and other people who want to rent it, the field. And Section B is really for dogs. And so we've lost that ability as a neighborhood to have kids come and do pickup sports, not organized sports, picnics, all of the things that were happening from 1983 to when in 2011 the fences went up. That kind of activity is no longer now available there. So it is a huge dilemma. I now have a little dog that can't go off leash, and so I had originally thought, well, this would be great to have the park just up the street for this dog. But when I think about it, I really believe that the best solution would be to find an area that is not in an existing park that has more opportunity for open space use, which would be Memorial Park. Find another option in the city where there can be a nice amenity-included dog park for people to go to. There are many people who drive to the park. I know that because they park across the street from me, so I see them get out with their dogs. So I know that there aren't probably quite as many people who are walking to that park to use it as there were when I was there for 13 years with my dog. So the idea of either driving to Memorial Park or to another park probably isn't as big a deal as one might think. I really also have to credit Shelley for, from the experience that I've had with her, for being open to looking at all kinds of needs in the city and trying to find places for everybody to be able to have fun, either playing bocce or having a community garden move out of the shade. So I think that there are many ways that we can address this, keep Memorial more open it up again to more informal use. Maybe do something with the community garden, and also find a great space for dogs that do need the enclosure, maybe just not in the middle of the central park of the city.
Any other comments?
So my name is Sam Freeman. I've been an Albany resident. I've been here for 23 years, and I've had dogs for most of that 23 years. I'm a relatively newcomer to Memorial Park because in the past, I did have a dog that could walk off leash under my voice control. I could take the dog anywhere. But that dog has since passed away. And I have a new dog who is a pup who does not know voice command yet and needs to be in a enclosed area with a fence where it can be safe, where I can go at times of the day when I know the people, and I'm one of the nooners, and I know that my dog will be safe with the dogs there. So I choose to go at times of the day when my dog can be safe. And I can work on recall. So having a fenced-in area is very important to me, and very important probably to any dog at certain stages of their life. An active pup needs a place to run, needs to be trained. It's hard to do training on recall on a long line in an open field. It's because at some point you have to progress from the long line to no long line. So for me, having call it an fenced off-leash area, lose the moniker of dog park. It's a fenced off-leash area where the dog can be safe, can be trained, and can interact with other dogs and not be constrained, because dogs need to be able to get away from each other. If it's too small, dogs can't get away, it causes other problems. I'm presently volunteering at Berkeley Humane in the dog training program. I'm learning a lot about dog training and problem dogs. Dogs need to be able to be separated either by distance, by their owners, what have you. For me, I drive to Albany, to Memorial Park. You know why? Because I have to bring water. I can walk to Memorial Park, but I have to drag my own water for the dog in the summer. So I have to drive. I have to bring a water bowl because there's no place for the dog to drink. So to the comment about people driving, well, in a way, we're forced to drive. So for me, so for me, the fact that Memorial Park is centrally located, it's a plus. If it was, I think I've said enough.
Any additional comments? Nope. Okay, so I'll bring it back to the commission.
So I just want to clarify again for myself. So really our discussion now is if we think there's enough here to make a request to council that we could consider this as a part of our work plan. Okay. Is there enough here?
Any thoughts, questions from the commission? You know, one thing that I think we haven't done as a commission is looked at our work plan recently. So I'm not saying I'm opposing it, but I think that I actually pulled out the city council work plan. And I just want to list other items on our work plan that we should actually regularly, as a chair, I take accountability for that. I should be bringing them up as items to discuss in future meetings. But just to let you know, some of the other items we have on our agenda or within our work plan are to review, measure our project opportunities, which we're about to do. Also investigate potential for open space use of Caltrans right-of-way. And I think one thing to note is, although Shelley did bring us examples of how we might use that space within the dog park potentially, I don't think we looked at the full range of opportunities that we might use without Caltrans space. So I think that's another thing to consider. Also to investigate veterans building retrofit funding options, to review existing memorials and installations on public lands, and to create policies concerning memorials. Well, I guess that's kind of related. So I just wanted to put that out there in terms of other items we're asked to consider this year.
So I have a question from Commissioner Patterson. So in the future, can we approve a dog park under the freeway with or without tying that to Section B? Should I say that again? Can we approve a dog park under the freeway with or without tying that to Section B?
Like leave Section B as is, and also,
Does it have to be either or, or can it be at both and? Yeah.
no, this is what you would work on, yeah.
And since the area under the Caltrans part is part of the work plan, potentially if we were just going to consider that for dog use, then we wouldn't need to necessarily, if that was the only topic.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yes.
I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm
Right,
just saying.
it is on the work plan, but it's a catch, because in
Yeah,
order
no, I know.
to even see if we can move forward with Caltrans, we'd have to know what we would want to move.
And the reason for me that we would want to broach this is because the clock is ticking with that. And so we would need to start working on that.
For the Measure R funds, you mean?
Well, I'm not the Caltrans and I suppose Measure R. If we wanted to, it's kind of an opportunity that's dropped in our lap, and so we need to respond to it, is what I'm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm in support of asking the council to amend our work plan.
Okay. One thing I'd like to note is, this discussion has been a lot about, some comments are just generally about dog parks, but some are definitely targeting Section B, which is definitely, obviously, contentious issue. And I just want to make light of the fact that, those people who would normally use Section B haven't been able to these past, I think, the closure ends like next week. And so there was a missed opportunity to inform those users of Section B in a, like by posting the signs on Section B, which I think is one of the most important things. So I just want the commission to recognize that there's potentially missing parties here that might have been interested, but they didn't know about it. So not to say that that matters for this other decision, but just to hear our public comments with that understanding.
So I have another couple comments from Commissioner Patterson. Sorry. Okay, sorry. I have a couple more comments from Commissioner Patterson. Should I start here? I think the under freeway area is a great space for dogs to run. It is close by the Bay Trail, near parking, and unlikely to be used for other recreational uses. I also like the mountain bike park there, and my understanding was that we could potentially fit both in that space.
It's a very large space. Let me see if I can pull my, probably crazy to pull it up, but it's a pretty large space, so it is the full space underneath the freeway from the train tracks all the way to where the off-ramp comes down. And some of it is directly under a freeway. The area next to the train tracks is more to the side of it and a little more quiet, and kind of a larger grass area. Yeah.
And would it still accommodate the park and ride as well? So there's room for all three uses?
Yes, the park and ride is on the other side of the street,
Okay.
underneath that freeway. And so also from my presentation, as you heard about park and ride, it's going to transform that space over in there in terms of how people can get in. Right now, if you drove down to the Buchanan area, it's pretty, doesn't look like it has any potential really, in terms of sidewalks and crossings and bike tracks to get to the buses that will be used for the park and ride.
So I too like the idea of doing some research into the space under the freeway for the dog park. I think that, Section B what's going on in Section B is super complicated. And, but I do like the idea of the city having additional places. So if Section B remains a multi-use park and is only open 6 or 9 months out of the year, that there'd be some other place where people could go, people who drive, people who, aren't using Section B as a neighborhood multi-use park. And maybe that would alleviate some of the use issues, some of the noise, and provide that community space for those people who really enjoy meeting up every day of the week. So I like the idea of having more spaces. I also like the Ohlone idea, but I definitely agree that having a really tall fence creates this really weird space. And I was thinking about I take the Ohlone to Berkeley. I ride my bike past the Ohlone, and at Hearst and MLK, there's that dog park in Berkeley, and it's got a low fence. It doesn't have a high fence, and it's wide. It must be twice as wide as Section B, but it's almost the same width as the Ohlone by Cordonisis, and it really has a different feel than Section B does. So, if Section B remains a dog park or, multi-use de facto dog park, I wonder if we could look into lowering the fence on the east side.
So the fence is high for the multi-use part, not for the dog park. It's for the balls and for the baseball and for soccer and things like that. That's why you have a high fence. You don't need a high fence for the dogs.
Right, but isn't it high on the west? Is it high on it's high on the west and the east? Couldn't you lower it on the east side?
Yeah, it seems like you could. Seems like you could, yeah.
So, and on the, what is that, the north as well?
Right, yeah.
Well, you know what, we can, we'll take public
Yeah.
comments, actually.
Yeah, we've had comments.
So we will take comments, but if you could let us have this discussion, and then we'll, if there's this need to take.
I just had an explanation, having lived there for 40 years, of why that fence is the way it is. I thought maybe I would just put a little PS in there to
So-
whatever you feel is appropriate.
I would just say that we're only talking about whether we're going to talk about it. I don't know if now is the time
To
to
talk
collect
about
a
the
lot
solutions
of, it might
for-
be kind of wasted air at this point.
Yeah, and it's something we could even potentially take up when we talk about other
Right.
options for Measure R funding.
right.
So, okay, so any other questions or comments from the commission?
Commissioner Patterson says, I support asking to add this to our work plan.
Okay. And I think if we don't have any questions here, I want to offer the moment to make a comment if you like.
We make you come to the podium because we want to hear you on TV.
I'm Winnie Kostancic, and I live right at the corner of Carmel and Thousand
Winnie,
Oaks.
excuse me, will you pull up that microphone?
Yeah, I'm Winnie Kostancic, and I live right at the corner of Carmel and Thousand Oaks, directly across from the dog park. And I've lived there for 40 years, since 1977. Now, that high perimeter fence has always been there, up Thousand Oaks and down Carmel. And that is because there didn't used to be the interior fence running along the ballpark. So they had that high fence because there were frequent balls and things that would come over, and that helped to confine them. However, with the addition of that high fence between sections A and B, probably that high perimeter fence along those two streets is no longer necessary, and they could do with a lower fence. But I thought I'd just give a little history that that was not something that was added when the dog park was put in or Section B was put in. It has always been there. The thing that has been added is that locking fence. There used to be just a fence that opened and closed. So that's my historical,
Thank you.
ancient history contribution.
When we start Jill Lodwig, again, when we start talking about fences, there's more commentary. I just want to say we've done so much work, with the city and with the community in trying to get Section B to a place where we're sleeping at night and able to deal with all the noise that comes from the dog park. And again, the population of the dog park changes, the people, the dog owners, but we went through a really difficult time for a long time getting dog park attendees to respect the rules and the ordinances that were set up. And my only concern about the fencing is the locked gate works. And it's been relatively peaceful, I would say, in the last year or so. It's been getting noisier. Last year, I think we saw kind of increasing problems. 2015 was sort of a quieter and a better year. But for the most part, there's been some improvements made. So in lowering the fence, there's going to be a segment of dog park people who jump the fence, I guarantee it, because there is a level of kind of protest involved and advocacy involved. So I encourage you to leave the fence high enough that the gate is actually serving a purpose, the lock gate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else have questions from the commission or comments? Anybody
Well, I'll
want-
make a motion that we ask council if we can add this to our work plan. Does that sound?
Are you okay with the bolded language? That would be the recommended.
Locations, options.
Yeah, the number 2. So you're making a motion for number 2?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that's broad enough. I think that covers it. Yeah, I'll that. I make a motion that we identify options for establishment of a dog park in Albany, examine the alternatives, and make recommendations regarding location options and pro/con analysis for each location option.
I'll second.
So voting, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next agenda item is, the presentation. Ohlone Greenway
Yes.
fruit and nut tree plantings.
Yes, this is Barth, and thank you for waiting. Some of you know him. He was early on in our Ohlone Greenway planning in terms of what we were going to try to take on, and his group has done some wonderful work, the rare fruit growers, California rare fruit growers, and he's here to give us an update on the fruit and nut trees.
Sure. So about 2.5 years ago, I recognized some of you. I came before you, and I had spoken with Shelley about planting fruit trees along the Ohlone Greenway. And, Restoration Design Group was in the process of figuring out the plan for the whole Greenway. So, working with them, working with folks in the community, and, all the discussion we had, put together a plan for different sections of the Greenway to have fruit trees planted. And the goal was, threefold. One is education about rare fruits, heirloom varieties of various types. Another is sustainability of the community, to have local fruit production. And another is to have a repository of heirloom varieties that are hard to find so that we can continue to propagate them. And so that winter, I started planting. And for the first year, it was just me planting. So I grew everything from seed directly and then planted them. And, it's been a roller coaster ride of planting, getting things mowed over, because we've had some difficulty with the contractors. So about 2/3 of the things I've planted have been mowed over at some point. But it's been, slowly moving upward. So right now we have about 100 trees planted. They are intentionally not labeled. So if you go down the Greenway, you'll see all of these, some are 1 foot tall, some are 3 feet tall, right? You'll see all the fruit trees. They're not labeled intentionally because there's been problems in other public plantings where when the trees are small, somebody just digs them up. They say, oh, a free tree. And actually one of the trees that I had labeled, a cherimoya tree, did get dug up and disappeared. So, once they get big enough, so I have a list, if you're curious. I shared the document with Shelley, and she can pass it along to you, of the current inventory of where all the trees are and what varieties there are. It's a multi-stage process that I go through. So first, I either direct seed and then I let them grow, and that only works at a certain time of the year. In the summer, bucket watering seedlings, so there's no irrigation on the green, actually piped irrigation. So, I bucket water and from the other side of the path, right, where there's hookups underneath the BART tracks. And then the next stage is usually a year in. Some of the trees are actually established and they don't need much water or any water. Then it's time to graft them. Most of these trees are ones where we want to graft them to some variety that's going to actually produce good fruit. And so right now, for example, there's about 20 avocado trees. I've grafted something around 10 or 15 of them to various varieties. And so, these are eventually will be producing almost year-round, because all these different varieties produce good fruit at different times of year. They're, some are small, some are large. They'll have different flavor characteristics. And not a single one that I can think of is actually commercially available, but they're all really good varieties. And the reason actually they're not commercially available often is because they're not good commercial fruit. They don't ship well. They'll turn to mush. They'll show bruises, right? So that was the original reason that Fuerte was no longer the main avocado, right? Haas is the main avocado because it's black. It doesn't show its bruises. So, we're trying to collect all of these varieties that people can't get. And then there's an annual sign exchange that's held by every California Rare Fruit Growers group. It's always held in Berkeley. The local chapter holds this. And people can come and get cuttings of all of these different varieties so that they can grow them in their own backyard. And so this will now serve as a repository for those. There's an analogous planting that's in San Jose that's mostly deciduous fruit and nut trees. So, a lot of stone fruits and apples and stuff like that. So they provide a lot of the cuttings for those kinds of fruits. Because we have sort of a unique climate where peaches are not going to really grow very well here, but avocados do, whereas avocados will get killed by frost in San Jose, whereas we barely get any frost. And so, a lot of the focus that I've had has been on things that are, we can uniquely grow here that you can't actually find almost anywhere in Northern California. We have a unique microclimate we can take advantage of. So, among these 100 trees, there's, something about 20 avocados. There's a number of white sapotes, a number of South American fruits that are very hard to find, that are very good. Suriname cherry, cherry of the Rio Grande, a number of other things, ice cream bean. And so they're all edible and all, I think, very interesting trees. So I'm hopeful that it's going to, they're going to establish well. The drought that we're in this winter means that I'm starting to have to bucket water some of the small ones, but that's fine. I'll get them established. There's only one section left that has not been planted. All the sections have been planted in some form. Some of them have been mowed over, so I've been replanting, but it's close to all the sections that I worked with Restoration Design Group on identifying it. And so there's, I think, 1 or 2 blocks where we decided there wasn't going to be anything because there just wasn't enough room between the fence and the path. And so besides those 2 blocks, it's the full stretch in Albany. I don't know if there were other things I should mention.
No, that's great. I can't, it's really a labor of love, and he's correct in going through this process with our, not city maintenance, but our contractors in the initial growing of these trees, because they're like this big. So they just looked like a weed, and we had to, to train
I put
them.
flags, but the flags sometimes were not enough.
Putting flags and marking them somehow, but it's almost as exciting. It just takes longer to see the growth of all the people at the fitness area.
Mm-hmm.
Driving to my office and seeing all these little trees that are now showing, and knowing what he went through, it just makes my heart so warm.
And a few of them are starting to flower. So, I think within a year, some of them will start fruiting. Some of them will take 3 or 4 more years before they start fruiting.
Thank you. I have a question. I'm just wondering if there's other opportunities in Albany for, other parks that you might also plant trees, additional trees.
Yeah, so I was involved a little bit in the establishment of the garden at Memorial Park when that was just getting started. The challenge there at the time was there was a lot of interest in annual vegetables and that kind of stuff. And I think now with some of the main people moving on, at least from when I talked to them, they were trying to get enough people in to keep it going, to keep the energy going. I don't know if you've all spoken with them about, the plans for the community garden. I think that's a good area to, a natural extension is spots in Memorial Park that are just a little bit further away where you don't want to have to maintain it actively. You can put in fruit trees. I actually, the weird thing I've run into frequently is that the natural tendency is to plant deciduous fruits, but they actually require more maintenance. So apples, plums, so on, right? You have to prune them regularly, otherwise you won't get good fruit production. They usually produce a crop at a single time and then drop all that fruit at the same time. So then it produces a mess if nobody picks it. So my bias is actually towards other fruits that don't require as much maintenance. The challenge with avocados is often that people are not familiar with, at least not yet, with when you pick them. So people see an avocado and they say, oh, I'll pick this, and then they won't get to eat it because it's not ready, and nobody else gets to eat it either. So, there's a bit of education that has to go on, but that's part of the goal, I think, of the community garden. I had spoken with Tony Walcott about 4 years ago when I had originally proposed this, and I had hoped that we could actually allow for people to plant them in the sidewalk strip anywhere in the city. There's, I think, probably that's a contentious issue for various reasons about messes on the sidewalks. I've always sort of been of the feeling that there's frequently a mess on the sidewalk from something or the other. And so, often there'll be fruit trees that drop, or non-fruit trees that drop all sorts of things on the sidewalk and make it slippery. So fruit trees would be just as good, and you get some fruit. And so in Berkeley, when I was living in Berkeley, I planted lots of fruit trees along the sidewalk strip that are still doing well there. So that would be great. And California Rare Fruit Growers has officially, I've presented a longer presentation, probably about an hour and a half or 2 hours to the group a couple months ago about the progress of Ohlone Greenway, and the group officially has adopted the Greenway as sort of a project that will be maintained by members of CRFG. And so there'll be support from CRFG folks if the city wants to expand to other places. A lot of the people are willing to donate fruit trees and time and knowledge about this. So
Wonderful, thank you. Any else have questions?
Oh, so just quickly, so the trees aren't labeled now, but once they're established and not, subject to theft, you then might label them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't actually know what the right solution for the labeling is. Every option I've seen ends up deteriorating in the weather. So maybe just every 5 years you have to put in a new label. I don't know. Because the Prush Park ones in San Jose, they put in really good labels and, like solid wood signs and metal signs. They're completely faded now.
Yeah.
So.
We have that as when we're ready, project for Eagle Scouts is to, if we get to the point of signage, just doing those little posts and putting signs in with your approval, and when it's ready.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Nice. I think there's a question coming up for you.
There is. Is there a plan for signage about the overall program along the Greenway? Oh, like a big intro sign to explain?
That would be nice. My original plan was I was going to make a website. And I can't remember if I registered it. I was planning on registering ohlonefruit.org just so that there was an easy to remember website. I started making a basic website for it, but I never posted it because I didn't, for the same reason that I haven't put signs up yet on the fruits. I didn't want to say, here are all the fruit trees. But yeah, that'd be great. I don't know where a logical place to put it would be because it's a very long and very narrow stretch of land. So yeah, we could think about it. I mean, maybe the library or somewhere around there would be, that's the one block that's the main block of this planting is the block between Marin and Solano. It just happened to be that way. It was where there was the most
that I
space.
could see that it's nicer to have a place and time. So potentially, maybe that's a sign for the future. Once you're not so, once you feel like they're resilient enough and people won't take them, that's maybe something in the future thing for the city to support. So it's great. Thank you. Okay.
Awesome, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Barth.
So, future agenda items. So, what we talked about today, the potential Measure R funding. How does the commission feel about picking up on that conversation for next month? Does that sound good? Next March?
I think that's, clock is ticking.
Yeah. And I don't, Shelley, is there any way to, I guess, promote that in the city in a more, I mean, maybe it's just what you normally do, but do you feel like it's worthy to sort of promote it in any other additional way or have any other format for public comment on that measure?
We can try. I mean, I can tell you the e-notification thing for Parks and Rec Commission is about 252 people that get that.
Okay.
And of that, we get stats. Of that, probably only 30% of them read it. So I don't know if that's a good indication.
That's actually pretty good.
You think it is?
response. Yeah,
Okay,
it's not
then
bad.
that's good. Besides just reaching out to groups, like, what I usually do. People
Okay.
who might have Jim's here, 'cause I was reaching out to him, or if there's the other items that might impact a group, I can definitely send out information to them.
And then we could have I don't know if you ever do next door posting. Does the city do that?
We can, yeah, we can. The
Okay.
city can post to, we don't participate in neighborhood discussions, but we can post to the neighborhoods, yes.
Okay. And I mean, I'm just thinking, I know we had this list of, what I would say is I don't necessarily recommend us taking action next month necessarily. I mean, I don't know how you all feel. But I wonder if there's another opportunity to just talk a little bit about other options for funding. I just feel like these were.
Sure, for the Measure R items, is that?
Measure R. And I guess that's what I'm asking, a call for for public ideas.
Right. We don't want to think that we have to choose from this pot. We
That's
can
right.
come up- I see.
Yeah, I mean, especially since we have $500,000, that's significant.
right.
So I would just say if there's a way for us to be open to that.
300?
Almost 300,000, right?
Yeah. Not $500,000, though.
$250,000, I meant to say,
that
sorry.
would be
$250,000.
Could we do a short workshop before the next meeting to talk about, with the public, to talk about the Measure R opportunities?
Kind of like the workshop for,
Soda tax, or no?
the last workshop we did was for the little pocket park out behind City Hall. kind of
Oh,
held a
right,
discussion
right,
format
right,
rather
right.
than the 3-minute comment period. Does that sound-
I wasn't there for that, so is that what you're, are you familiar with that method, that workshop? Okay.
Yeah, oh, you were there. It was for the, we had
Oh, the
RWT.
pocket
We
park.
had the
Oh,
table
okay,
right
Sorry, I
here
thought you were
and-
saying
yeah.
Shrine Park. Okay,
No,
yes.
no, yeah, the
Right, right,
other
right.
part.
And that was more with, just with the late at the time, because there wasn't a lot of public participation. But with the workshop, how would the public be integrated into that kind of process?
Well, if someone else would have come to that meeting, they would have sat at the table with us. Well,
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Patterson's husband was there. I think was the only member of the community, in addition to the consultant that led that. That way of doing it just invites people to sit at the table with you, and you can go back and forth. And so you could host it where you sit down in front, and it is more of a back and forth with the group.
Okay.
And then you just lead it like that. Here's items, let's do pro and cons or comments on who's interested in this or other ideas. So it could be led however you'd like to lead it.
And I'm just wondering, how then is that sort of incorporated into the comments? I mean, do we still have the microphone that is recording it, right?
It makes it more difficult, but it's nice when people can sit at one table, but if you have a large group, then we could set a microphone up in the audience to have people still come to a microphone, but not come to a podium necessarily.
Okay.
And that just is you try to make the setting feel more like a interaction rather than the meeting part and a time limit.
Yeah, and I know in this case, I think a lot of people are here for one particular issue, but when it's just a general call like that, I don't know how many people we actually get in this room, even though lots of people have opinions about what to do with the funds. So I'm wondering, what other ways does the city reach out to get that data, to get that sort of public opinion?
That is an ongoing issue. I mean, pick a commission. We try to post and do as much as we can, and
Pick an organization.
There's
An
no,
organization.
there's no like Survey Monkey or something that
we try everything in rec for any sort of event. I can tell you that Dinner with Albany is pretty highly well known, and I will still have someone say, "What is going on?"
Yeah. Okay.
And then that blows me away. But I would say that of any other commission, we do the most outreach in terms of like personal outreach.
Sure.
To make sure that people feel involved. Everybody does something, but some are more required, depending on the commission.
I hate to lose the time, but it is a Dinner with Albany year. You could have something there, have a wall, write your ideas.
Yeah.
No, I know you want it to be a pure just
Who wants to
social
do
thing.
that?
A lot of people do that.
Or
It's
even
fun.
in
It's
between
very-
that time. No, but I like that. I mean, like something
Yeah,
at the
so there.
library, right? You could have it posted at the librray, a whiteboard or a
Yeah,
piece of
yeah.
paper at the library or the piece of paper at the community center. Shelley's like, who's going to do that?
Can,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm just thinking of that model. What was it? That park. Anyway, I'm not going to
The
go there.
maquette or
You know what I'm talking about? The pop-up park got a lot of good comments just from putting a whiteboard up. So, okay. All right. So the next month, I would say, then we pick up this discussion. See how that goes. And any other requests for agenda items?
There's a few listed as suggestions at
okay.
the end
on the
there.
back, on the other side. Yeah.
I have on there as a suggestion, you haven't met Sid, who is our senior center supervisor, and I think you would find it interesting to hear what they're doing over there in terms of senior services.
Okay. How's the approved street tree list? I'm only asking you because I don't want to.
No, we were supposed to meet over email.
We were.
And we never did that.
Never did that. I don't think there's a whole lot for the commission left to do. We need to,
I think that we have to send an email
Yeah.
between the four of us and just say, yes, this works, or modify this. So maybe we should just put that as an action item for the three of us to
Yeah,
touch base.
sounds good.
I would say one thing John mentioned to me was this idea of a heritage tree policy. So maybe it's something that we could just bring to the commission, because I think even if Gino and I spoke about it, we'd really want the discussion to be here, and that's totally a different question from the other street tree policy, because it's actually heritage trees that are in people's property that wouldn't be a city-owned tree. So maybe we can bring that as an agenda item, just to have John talk about it and just discuss the idea generally. So,
And then you would have to decide if you would like to amend the work plan for that, because
Yeah.
that's a very separate from
Oh.
street trees. Yeah, because that's on personal property.
And it would have to be,
Yeah.
the council would presumably have to think, are we the appropriate commission? I don't know.
They could.
Probably.
It
I
could,
don't know.
it could be planning and zoning, I'm not sure.
Right,
If-
right.
We'd have to ask John how other communities have done that.
Right.
So we can still talk about it, though, right, as an agenda
I
item?
can bring it up to see how, if you'd like to.
Yeah, okay, so let's
Make
just
that
bring it
move,
up for
just
discussion.
like we
and
did
then-
tonight.
Yeah, so then the action would be ask for it to be on the work plan. Okay, great. Okay, I think that's it. Anybody else have anything? Nope, okay, so
Tree
meeting.
tree removal, are you,
Tree removal.
Policy?
You know, maybe I'll let you know, Shelley, if
Okay.
that's okay. See if Gino and I have time to meet about it, and then,
Okay.
okay. Guess we'll just start it, didn't it? Okay, so thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.